Hey guys, got something really special for you this episode. A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, I was working with a company doing some trainings for them, and I met the other gentleman who is in your frame right now. If you're watching on the YouTube channel, if you're listening, you'll just have to take my advice for it. So I met him as he was one of the leaders with that company. And then I met the other person on your screen right now shortly thereafter. And they came to meet with me in South Beach. And I can still vividly remember going to lunch on the Lincoln Road Mall, in the pedestrian mall here in South Beach, and just saying, I have never seen two people more in love than these two. It's just insane how infectious their energy is, how they gaze into each other's eyes, how they can't take their eyes off each other, how they can't take their hands off each other. I haven't seen such moonstruck love since I was in the 6th grade. And so now today, I am so happy to say they are joining me. We're going to do a show about prosperous relationships, prosperous marriages. And I am with John David Mann, who I will tell you about in a sec, and Gabriel Mann, his lovely and talented wife. John will be known to most of you who follow my work because I've had Bob Berg on numerous podcasts and YouTube shows. John and Bob are the co-authors of the Go Giver series. So a lot of you will know John through having met Bob and the interviews I'm doing with him. And so now John has kicked Bob out of the co-authorship track for a new book and brought in Anna, which is called The Go Giver Marriage. And the second I heard about it, I had to have these guys on and share their gifts with you. So first, John and Anna, welcome. It's just great to see you again.
Oh, it's so good. You know, we haven't eaten since that lunch and we're so hungry. I mean, so hungry. So, it's really, really good to be here.
It is. Thank you.
Yeah. So that was at least 20 years ago, right? That lunch on Lincoln Road Mall?
25.
Right?
25, actually.
25.
It really was a quarter century. I hate to put it in those terms, but that's the truth of it.
Listen, I'm at that age now where I do start to measure things in quarter centuries and half centuries. So anyway, I wanted you guys on because, you know, what is going to contribute more to prosperity than relationships, right? I mean, probably we can say health is probably the most important dynamic. And then I would think relationships would be a really close second, and I'm hard pressed to think what else might, certainly money, the material aspects, a lot of the other holistic parts of prosperity would kind of pale because relationships impact all those other things, your health, your mental harmony, your spiritual harmony, all of that stuff. How did this come about? Well, actually, you know what? Before we even go there, there will be new people who have not read the Go Giver series. And I find there's all kind of confusion about people, what a Go Giver is. They seem to think it's just means you give away everything and it's all altruistic, and that's not really the case. So one of you want to kind of set the table with what that's about?
Yeah, that's great that you said that. I love that because our podcast hosts don't typically have that perspective right out of the starting gate, and it's a really good one to have. Yeah, it's not about giving away the shirt off your back. It's not about clearing out your bank account and giving it to the poor and becoming a saint and living on top of the Himalayan mountains. Go Giver is about living your life with a spirit of generosity. So living your life in a big way that doesn't see life as a zero-sum game where if you win, I lose, but rather sees life as a win-win game, not a zero-sum game, but 100% sum game, which is if I help you win big, it makes me even bigger. The classic laws of economics, the dismal science it's called, say that if I give you some of my stuff, well, now you have my stuff and I don't have it anymore. I just made you richer and I made me poorer. Yeah, well, human beings don't operate that way. Human interaction operates by a completely different weird math. I call it weird math, and love is the weirdest math of all. The weird math says, if I give you more respect, attention, care, compassion, empathy, knowledge, experience, if I share more of those things with you, I don't get poorer in those things, I get richer in those things. It's weird math. And it creates a rising tide that rises all the ships, yours and mine. And that's what the Go Giver is. That's that's the original book. The Go Giver is about living life with an eye toward putting your focus on sharing with the other person, supporting the other person, adding value to their lives, and thereby becoming a richer person. And the moment that the first really rough draft of that book slid out of my desktop printer and went thunk on my desktop, Anna picked it up and read it because she's the first reader in every book I write. And the thing you need to know about Anna, aside from the fact that I have starry eyes for her and all the things Randy said, is that she has a master's degree in clinical psychology, and she's spent her entire adult life with her professional focus on helping people lead more fulfilling lives. Marriage therapy, marriage coaching. This is like her métier. This is her deal. This is her passion. So she read this book and she said, you guys have something good here. This is great. This book is great. Hey, this book could be a great book about marriage because this describes what we do. So that was the sparkle in her eye 17 years ago in 2005 that we've wanted to turn into a book ever since. And it finally came time. Here we are.
I've always maintained that the true elements of prosperity are infinite, right? Somebody says, hey, I need a hug. You don't say, well, I only have 6 hugs left and the weekend's coming up. The more hugs you give away, the more you give back. The more love you give away, the more. And that's why I think the people who follow my work have always gravitated to your and Bob's work in that book series, and why we've done so many things together, him and I, because our respective tribes are in sync with that. How did Anna, so what's it been like for you watching this series of Go Giver books over the years and make their way gradually to the point where it got here?
Well, obviously, we never wanted this book to compete with any of the other books in the series. So we waited. I'm glad you mentioned the word relationship, because this book is as much about relationships, all relationships, business, family, children, siblings, as it is about marriage. And I always felt that that was one of the missing links in the Go Giver series. Not that it wasn't defined simply by the actions of being a Go Giver, that you would be generous in relationships and be looking to add value to somebody else's life, but to define it in pure relational terms that actually fit with the developmental model of psychology that says that what you needed as an infant, as a child, you also need as an adult. It kind of puts the laws or the secrets, if you will, into perspective and makes them applicable.
Yeah, and I know someone's going to write in the comments, but does this apply if I'm not in a marriage? So yes, guys, save your breath. It does. It's like any relationship. I'm glad you made that connection between business and personal, because there's no way to separate that, right? How you relate with people in your business is going to be how you relate with people in your personal life. And it's all very interrelated, right?
Completely. And everybody needs the kind of attention that you need when you're a baby. We all have this very vulnerable child inside of us. Most of us keep it under wraps in a very tight way. But when we have the opportunity to have somebody see us and witness us, and I believe that's one of the deepest needs we have, is to be witnessed in authentic terms. But it's missing in a lot of situations. A lot of people have bosses that just bark at them, but don't really ever take the time to stop and appreciate them. So it puts it in perspective. And yes, it's very much a business book as well.
I just want to add to that you don't sit with a baby and say, "Hey man, I get you." That's not the language that you use. When you're with the baby, you say, "Oh, goochie, 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 goo." But it's the same thing. You're saying the same thing. You're saying, "You're amazing. Wow, look at you." And then when you're an infant and when you're growing and you're a young child, you're saying things like, "Look at you. You stood up all by yourself and you could read that book all by yourself. And look how tall you're getting. And you are so smart. You are such a handsome little boy." You're saying all these things because Anna taught this term to me, primary narcissism. I didn't learn it that well, because that's the stage when you're an infant, when you're first forming your identity of who you are. It's not the same thing as being a narcissist, which is a whole different ball of wax. In that primary vulnerable, nascent phase, you're forming your picture of yourself. And so we feed that by saying, "Gucci, Gucci, goo." We still need that. I'm just repeating what Anna said, but it's so important. We still need that as adults. We need people to say, "Wow, you're amazing at what you do." We say this frequently in podcasts. At the end, after the recording is shut off, we'll say, "Wow, you are such a good interviewer. Those questions were so spot on and you listened so well." And you see the person go, "That's me he's talking about," We still need it. It's just like saying "Gucci, Gucci, goo" all over again. It's authentic, it's real, it's necessary, it's food.
Yeah, one of the kind of the promo stuff about the book says, to say love is necessary for marriage is like to say oxygen is necessary to climb a mountain. Yeah, you need the oxygen, but there's going to be a little more required. You guys have kind of keyed in on 5 secrets to lasting love. You want to talk about 1 or 2 that kind of jump out at you as you think so important for the people watching and listening?
Sure, you go first. You go first, John.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I was already kind of stepping into that territory with what I was saying a moment ago. The first secret we call, and by the way, all 5 secrets are simple behavioral activities you can do every day, literally minutes a day. They're not big deals. Our belief is that big changes are created by small actions repeated over time. So we're not talking about $90,000 in 3 months of therapy and trying to dramatically change your personality. We're talking about modifying your behavior and little habits that you use to replace old bad habits. And the first secret is simply appreciation. Starting with 3 times a day, find something you love about your partner, your friend, your associate, or we say your spouse, something you love about them, and then take a moment to tell them. Don't just think it, don't just appreciate it, but say it in words. By the way, something specific. The more specific, the better. So just saying, "Hey, you're a great guy." Well, that's nice. What does that mean? Great. "Hon, you look terrific." Oh, well, that's sort of nice. But no, we're talking about specific things that you praise a person for. And these are things that we do automatically. when we're in that first romantic stage of love, when you're all dazzled, like when Randy met us 25 years ago, there was nothing either one of us could possibly do that wasn't amazing, right? That's how we all are when you're first in love. Oh my God, did you see the way her eyebrows twinkle? It's ridiculous. And then life happens. We've got finances, we got issues, we got jobs, we got entrepreneurial activities, we've got sicknesses and kids and the world, and there's COVID and there's politics, and we start taking it all for granted. We start assuming, well, she knows I love her. She knows I think she's an amazing person. She knows I think she's the most thoughtful person I ever met. She knows I think she's dazzling. Yeah, but she doesn't. We need to be told over and over. It needs to be repeated. And that's simply the first habit. Bring it back out, make it conscious, write it down if you need to on a pad of paper, make a list, and take the time to say them.
All right, 3 times a day. Anna, what's one that jumps out for you?
I really love the third secret. It's a lot more complex. It's called to allow. And, when we get into relationships, a lot of our history from our childhood rises up. It's got this, I call it the baggage we bring to the marriage or to the relationship. And as soon as the honeymoon's over, it magically starts unpacking. And all of a sudden, you're either trying to control the other person, or you're telling them how you want them to be. I'm attracted to you, but I'd be more attracted to you if you lost 20 pounds. The I love you, but syndrome. And I think that the issue of control in relationships is one that anyone who's had any history with trauma, neglect, abuse, the list goes on and on of any kind of childhood traumas that happen to all of us. There's not a single person on this bus that escaped it. So, when you look at all that stuff and you realize that it's going to enter into your relationships, it's going to start seeping in. You're going to find yourself in that place where, you're either being a little bit critical, a little bit passive aggressive, a little bit controlling. Those are the moments when you need to be able to back up and recognize your material, have a little emotional intelligence, and allow the other person to be who they are, the way they are, and not to try to put your stamp on who they are. Mm-hmm. At the same time, it's also the time, we call this the for better or for worse, the for richer or for poorer, and in sickness and in health. And it's the sickness, the poorer, and the worse. And because of that, it's those moments when, the proverbial what has hit the fan, and there's either a tragedy or a drama or something going down, and you guys have to drop everything and immediately attend to it. And it really means that there'll be moments in your relationship that are not fair, where you have to pick up the slack for more than you were expecting because of something that's happened. And I'll give you a tangible on that. 10 years back, I broke my leg in a compound fracture. Happened one afternoon. I did a long plie down the cellar stairs and landed on my foot, and my leg just crushed. Wow. And I had over 30 fracture lines, and I instantly couldn't get a glass of water or a cup of tea across the room. Wow. And in our house, I'm like a creative cook. I love to cook. This guy loves to eat. So I am constantly in the kitchen making all kinds of gourmet delights. And I went from being that person to being somebody who couldn't cook dinner or get a cup of tea or water or even carry a load of laundry to the laundry room for a year and a half.
Wow.
So John had to just drop everything and pick up the slack. Now, the reason I mention this is that he could have been really grumpy about it within 30 days. It's like, yeah, I know you want a cup of tea. Yes, I know there's a load of laundry that needs doing. So the practice of allow for both of us was, for me, I was not ever going to remind him of anything that needed doing. Nothing. And that's a practice. And we say this all the time.
Practice. That is a practice. Wow.
It is. We say this all the time. Love is a practice, because it is. it's not some static thing. You don't fall in love and have this and ride on a wave of love and excitement and romance. That romance backs down, reality comes into play, and there you are. But at the same time, John needed to be the guy who made dinner at night, managed getting, I could drive still, but I mean, like, he drove my daughter to school back and forth. I mean, he did all kinds of things because I had trouble getting in and out of the shower. It was like a lot of work. So yeah, so he never made a single complaint in a year and a half. And I rehabbed like crazy. Nobody thought I'd ever walk again normally. I walk just fine. I mean, we go for 4 and 5 mile walks every day. The wonders of rehab and doing a good job with doing it. But, it was a lot of work, and that will happen. A parent will die, somebody will lose a job, a kid gets mysteriously hit by a car. I mean, terrible things happen to people every day. You have a child with special needs.
Yeah.
That's happened to both John and I. We both have children with special needs. And, it's just one of those things that it's a ringer in the relationship. And if you don't allow for it, and if you don't allow your partner space to heal, space to be where they're at, then you're going to be in battle. You're going to be battling. And it's just not a great place to be.
I want to add to that too, that, it wasn't that I took over those tasks. Sure, that's great to do.
Mhm.
It was that it would have been so easy, and a lot, would have been so easy to get grudging about it, get grumpy about it, as Anna said, and have this attitude like, this is like, I'm doing all I can. Okay, get off my back. This is not fair. We love to tell people marriage is not fair. Relationships are not fair. That's not the point. That's not the plan. They're not set up to be fair. They're not an equal exchange of you get 50 and I get 50. They are a giving of your all, because you're going to get so much back. So what happens is, it's easy to slip into this mindset of thinking that marriage is a compromise. And we hear this a lot. People in their words or in their attitude, you can feel it. They think, well, it's not so bad. Marriage is kind of a compromise. I give up some and I get some. No. You're missing it, man. You're missing the opportunity. You're missing the abundance here. Marriage is not a compromise. It's an opportunity to be allowing, take a breath, to give to the other person, and the process grow. I'm a different person than I was a quarter century ago. And I'm a much, I think, bigger, richer, deeper person as a result of being with Anna than I ever could have been on my own. To me, the purpose of marriage is to live with another person who becomes the you might say the agent for growing you bigger than you could have grown on your own. So we see it as an opportunity to become your biggest self, your fullest self.
And your most prosperous self. Since we're talking about prosperity, it's like, everything about adding value to another person's life is about living prosperously. And when you live prosperously, you attract prosperity.
Yeah.
John and I, our lives are so much richer now, Randy, than when we met you 25 years ago. And I don't mean financially. I mean in every possible way. I mean, John just wrote his first novel to great acclaim. It got nominated for a Barry Award. He didn't even dream of novels 20 years ago. And, it's like—
He did, but I didn't. She said, you could be a great novelist. And I would go like, thank you for the vote of confidence. Translation, I don't believe you. But she kept saying it. And lo and behold, after 20 years, I believed it too.
So let me check out a theory, because you mentioned both of you having special needs children from previous relationships. So for anybody keeping score at home wondering how that happened. So my theory is parents of special needs children are actually aliens from another universe, because no human could actually be as generous and prosperous and loving as it takes to be the parent of a special needs child, or even adopting special needs pets and things like that. So what do you say to the skeptics out there who say, okay, this go-giver marriage stuff works for those guys because obviously they're aliens from another universe. This doesn't work for normal humans.
All I have to say, I'll say one sentence and then turn it over to Anna, is I hate to break it to you, dude, whoever it is that just said that out there in the world, but you're married to a special needs world.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. We all have different neurology. You know, I mean, there's so many different perceptions in the world, as many as there are people. And yeah, it's a special needs world. It's just that it's just beginning to get some notice. But I'll tell you, you're absolutely right. I'm so glad you said it that way. I instantly became a warrior the minute I had a special needs child. I mean, a warrior. I sued my public school system for a placement that cost $24,000 and got it all done in 15 minutes.
Wow.
And I didn't offend anybody. It was just like, you simply don't have the program that can address my child's needs. I can go to the state level if you'd like.
Or get in her way.
Yeah. And so you become empowered. And I'll tell you this, you know, you not only become empowered when you have children with special needs, but if your spouse is on board with this being something that was actually meant to be, it's going to grow you to a much bigger place, and that there's a prosperous ending for you and your child, because that's the other piece. One of the secrets in the book is to fully believe in another, to take your spouse or your partner who might have a different career, a different value system. I mean, they might be from a different culture, but when you fully believe in them and fully believe in their capabilities in the world, and you make that known to them. I am the person that told John he could write novels 20 years ago, and he clearly did not believe me.
It's just so crazy because all of his books are basically novels, because he has done so many of these parables and fables, which are just 1/100th of a millionth of a degree off of a novel, really. I'm glad you brought that up, because, you know, I have a lot of writers who follow my work. And so I've got to delve into the writing a little bit. So for those who don't know, John has started a partnership with, what's his name? Brandon Webb, with this. Tell him about that series, because it's funny, when we were chatting, we hadn't seen each other in 25 years, but of course we email and text and other stuff. And he was talking about, I just want to be in my lonely writer's garret composing classical music. And instead I'm writing supernatural thrillers about nuclear submarine attacks and, you know, whatever. How did that series come about? And what's the difference to you, you know, when you're writing a go-giver book versus one of these things with Brandon Webb?
Yeah.
I just have to add something before you start.
Go ahead,
We have a very funny phrase in our marriage where John often comes into the kitchen and I'll say, how are you? And he goes, dark. I am very dark. And it's a joke, because he's the sunniest person that any of us know. But he is very dark when he goes into that room and writes thrillers. He's dark.
Okay. Don't get near me, man. I will eclipse your light. Yeah. So I'll endeavor to make this brief. I mean, I met Brandon over 10 years ago. This is our 7th. We just finished our 8th book together. So where it started was, Brandon is a former Navy SEAL sniper. In fact, his platoon was one of the first SEAL platoons on the ground in Afghanistan after 9/11, exploring the caves, the training caves. And when he returned to the States, he became the head instructor for the Navy SEAL sniper course, which is reputed to be the hardest course of instruction of anything in the world. So Navy SEAL sniper course is a pretty intense thing. When he got out of the military, he is very entrepreneurial, and eventually he decided to write a memoir. And I was the writer that his agent said, you need a really great writer to do this with. You can't do it yourself. So we teamed up. We immediately were in sync. We have completely different backgrounds. I am not a Navy SEAL sniper. He does not play the cello. We have nothing in common. But it's weird. We had these like similar values. We both have this value for excellence. We both have this value for personal freedom. We have a lot of things actually that we shared in common, exclusive of the particulars of our background. So we clicked. We wrote his memoir. It was a New York Times bestseller. It was one of my first few books. Just a year after the Go-Giver, I wrote that book called The Red Circle. We wrote a bunch of memoirs about different Navy SEALs, and we wrote a bunch of nonfiction books about applying principles of special operations, of focus, and of the things that they need to learn and master to the world of civilian life and entrepreneurship. But he'd always had this idea for a thriller, loosely based on an event that he'd witnessed in his time on an aircraft carrier. And in one of our first conversations back in 2009, he said, would you ever be interested in writing a novel? And here I am, fresh from Anna telling me you'd write great novels. And so I said, dutifully, man, I'd love to. I'm in. And the voice in my head says, are you crazy? And then we finally did. We wrote it, and it was published last July. It's called Steel Fear, steel like the metal, Steel Fear. And I won't give away the plot of that, but the short story is it's a fugitive Navy SEAL stalks a serial killer on board an aircraft carrier in the midst of the Pacific Ocean. So it's a locked room mystery, only the locked room is an aircraft carrier with 6,000 people on board.
Yes,
and
it's a fascinating book. I haven't finished it yet, so I'm glad you didn't give the spoiler. So how do and for those guys watching, whenever I'm doing these kind of interviews, they're like, oh my God, you've written 14 books. That's amazing. You've got more than double that, right? You've done more than 30, I think, right?
Yeah, coming in on 3 dozen.
Coming on 3 dozen. Amazing. And your books are doing really well. The ones you do, everything across the board. There's a pattern there. What do you see? What is the thing you have to do for a cello player to write a book with a Navy SEAL sniper that is the same that a husband has to do to have a marriage with a wife? What's the parallels there?
Yeah, this is a really great, crafty question. But it's got an answer. And the answer is one word: empathy. You need to be able to get out of your own way, take a breath, and say, now, what is going on with this person? What is, one thing we say in the book, in the Go Giver Marriage, there's this line: every individual is an undiscovered continent. And you hear people say, well, we've been married for 20 years and nothing to talk about it anymore. Are you serious? What? Each person, if you unwrap a person, there's so much candy inside. It's ridiculous. There's so much experience they have, good and bad, and in between. There's so much going on. Every person is an unmapped continent. So it's a question of saying, okay, so who are you? I just learned a few things about Anna yesterday in the kitchen that I never knew about her before. We've been together for 25 years. 20 years from now, I'll be learning more things about her I never knew before. And that's what it's like when you're writing a book, like with Brandon. It's like, what's it like on an aircraft carrier? Let me forget who I am and just become spirit, just merge with that person, that situation, they say you write what you know. I say, don't write what you know, write what you don't know and learn it, empathize with it, seep into it. It's the same thing with sales. When you're going to be a salesperson, you sit down with the person and say, now, who is this person? What are they all about? You don't sit there and say, how can I convince them to buy my product? That's like anti-sales. Real sales is, tell me about yourself. I want to know who you are, what makes you tick. That's where it starts.
Yeah. Anna, how does a couple write a book about creating the perfect marriage without getting divorced? How does that work? Because I would think that the most likely, the average couple, I think, if you told them, we want you to write a book together about what makes your marriage work, that would probably be the final straw that creates the divorce. What is the magic secret that you guys have learned that the rest of us need to know?
I'll tell you that I think that one of our secrets is that we really do have individuation down. We are two very separate people with separate interests and separate ways that we're growing. And when you go off and grow on your own, and you're not tied at the hip to your spouse or to your relationship, you always are discovering new things about yourself, and you're bringing all of that newness home. So you are an expanding landscape, as John was just describing, by the mere fact that you are growing. You are more interesting because of it. I started off in psychology. I know when you met and I met, we were all in business. But I started off in psychology. I was teaching at the graduate level in a clinical psychology department. I worked as a therapist, and it was really my first love. And despite my sort of short entry into the business world, and I still do consulting, but much more in this area, I really felt like this was my home. This is the stuff that really makes my heart open up, because there's so much to understand and discover about any individual in the world. And I can take any single person, and once you unwind the traumas they've been through, the relationships they've had, the ways that they feel they've made mistakes, the things that have happened, there's just so much to discover. So the reason I think that we were able to write a book successfully, Randy, is that we have two separate offices. We have, our work is very different. I'm coaching all the time and teaching. And John and I just decided that the book would divide into two halves. The first half is called The Parable, and the second half is called The Practice. And the parable is really just a beautiful story that illuminates the 5 secrets and just wraps up. It's I think John's very best parable he's ever written. It's a beautiful story.
And he's done some amazing parables.
He has. He wrote, after Spencer Johnson died, he wrote the sequel to Who Moved My Cheese, called Out of the Maze. He wrote with David Bach. He wrote The Latte Factor. I mean, he's there are people in New York who see John as the parable king, the only person who can really write one and write one well. Yeah. And I'm not just bragging. He really has people that are huge fans. But he knew the parable was his to write, and we had talked over what the secrets were. So that was a sort of well-known fact between us. But I took the entire second half of the book and wrote it myself. Now, the beauty of working together is that I can edit John and he can edit me, because neither one of us gets attached. We really have individuation down. We don't argue over the color the kitchen cabinets are going to be on the new kitchen. It's like, I like white. You like white too? Great. It's like that. I mean, so he can always take anything anyone's written and make it better. So I was the lucky one. I was the one who could, just pour it out in pure psychological terms and give people lots of things to practice. And he came in and gave it a structure. Here's what it is. Here's why it works. And here's how you can take it out and practice it in your life. So he gave it a beautiful structure, and then I was able to really just follow that. So, it was just so easy and so much fun. I mean, there wasn't any stress. We didn't have a single argument in the process, which I know people probably think is crazy.
At the same time, I just want to add that, when Anna was first drafting content for her second half, she'd bring me stuff and show it to me. And my first thought was, and this is, I think it's hilarious myself, but my first thought was, wait a minute, that's not how I'd say it. And because she brought to the material a sort of an academic background, and it wasn't expressed academically and drawing, but there was this sort of theoretical underpinning, and there was content that's like, I wouldn't say it that way. And my temptation, so help me, was to erase it and make it like me. And she talked about the secret of allowing. I got to practice allowing. I got to sit back and go, take a breath, John. Anna's doing this half, and then let it be what it is, and just massage the English a little bit and just work with it and see where she's going with it. And I realized that she had stuff to say in there that I'd never thought of, and that I would never have thought of, that made it so much better. That's the way the other person would be with a house, with decorating, with a life. They'll bring ideas that you didn't have. And if you can just be allowing about it, it's like, you know what? This is going to make me better. I wouldn't have thought of it. And at first it makes me like, well, I'm not sure if this fits, but wait a second, take a breath. They have ideas. The world knows you better than you know yourself sometimes. And she is an agent of the world telling me, John, this can grow in this way that you've never thought of. So yeah, it was, we could have fought over stuff, but that's being the small me.
Yeah, yeah. So what do you guys want to happen from the book? What's the big picture, where you want to see this go?
Well, first off, we're actually teaching workshops that people can sign up for directly on our website. And what they are is a deep dive into the 5 secrets with another hour plus on Zoom for people to ask questions and interact about what it means and how it's working in their relationship. And it's been interesting because we've had many moments of that in podcasts. We've had some hosts who have really talked very candidly about their own previous marriage or their own, situation that they found themselves in, things that they encountered that really hurt, or that, so it's an opportunity for people to not only take a deep dive on the 5 secrets, but then also have opportunity to ask questions and interact about what it all means. So we're teaching those. They're available to sign up on the website. And then the other thing that we're doing is we're starting the Go Giver Marriage Coaches Program to train people that want to add this element to their existing coaching, or they just want to coach marriage directly. And that's beginning in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
And we're excited about it just because I'd love to have more people out there as ambassadors doing the work directly with people, because my practice is busy, and I'd like to clone myself a few hundred times.
Yeah.
I will add that what I'd like to see happen out of the book is that people become more conscious about their relationships and shift from seeing them as compromises and restrictions to seeing them as opportunities for growth.
All right. So what's the website for the workshops and stuff? And we'll put these in the show notes for you guys listening. And then what's the website? I know the book, what's the actual release date of the book is?
It's March 8th.
March 8th. So I'm trying to think. Yeah, we'll probably have this out before the book is out. So I know you have a website for like advance orders, and you've got a lot of goodies you're giving people. So give those 2 websites, please.
The website is all one word, no hyphens, gogivermarriage.com. gogivermarriage.com. And that's the whole website. So right on that site, you'll find right on the homepage, you'll see the book, the description. There's a way to pre-order the book on that site and register your order so you get the goodies Randy is talking about, which include a pair of, we call them mini masterclasses, video classes that Anna and I did from our living room couch. One is on the mindset of lasting love, and one is on dealing with conflict for like 30, 40 minutes. And then as a bonus, you get a 1-minute video of us with our dog. Who could pass that up? And then there's also a part of that package is access to a live Zoom fireside chat we're going to do 2 weeks after the book launches with Q&A interactive, hosted by our buddy Dan Rockwell of the Leadership Freak blog. So Dan's a big fan of the book. He's going to be there for that.
Good stuff. All right, I got to run to my next gig, but I'm so delighted we had this chance to spend together. I'm so delighted that I'm able to share you guys with my tribe, and love the book, love what you guys are doing, and stay in touch. And you guys watching, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Get this book, get the pre-order. You're going to love it. All right, thanks, guys.